What's up, guys? Episode 5. On this episode, we sit, we chat, we talk, we discuss some ideas about investing into oneself and taking an inventory on the proverbial programs that are running your life. Some good, some very bad. Welcome back. Welcome me back. It's been a minute. Episode 5. I asked my team here, I said, could we please make the studio look like, between two ferns? I kind of like that feel, that vibe. Now we're just mixing it up. We got to keep it interesting for you and for us. If you found the previous episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, I hope you liked them. I hope maybe you got something out of them. And if you're here again, then maybe there's a potential for that. Episode 5. Today I want to discuss a few topics, a few things that have been on my mind for a while. Some things that I've been rummaging through a little bit in my mind for several years, and especially the last 3. Some concepts that are helping me, some concepts that I think can help you, and that at some point in most people's lives, if they go down the pathway of investing into self, into becoming who they want to be, they come across these topics in one way or another. Also, I want to note that there's a gigantic fly in this studio that may or may not land on this beautiful bald head, so don't you worry about that. I'm gonna keep spitting these truths to you. So in investing into oneself, what does that mean? What does that look like? For me, that's something that I started doing several years ago and had some highs and some lows with it, and some times where I was a little bit more involved in the process of that than others. Especially the last 3 years, I've been leaning very hard into trying to step into the person that I want to be, that I need to be, and ultimately that I want to become. Who's Luke Krubeck? What's my brand? From everything down to what do I look like? How do I dress? What's the energy that I carry when I walk into a room? Any of these things can go into what your personal brand is, what that definition of who you are, I guess, really is to you. So I think when it comes to diving into this self-help realm, it comes down to a topic that I think is one of our greatest gifts, which is free agency. Free agency often is viewed from the standpoint of we have an opportunity in this life to choose between right and wrong. And though, yes, I believe that's free agency, I think free agency is much more than that. I think free agency goes deeper into the realm also of every moment's a choice. Every choice has prices and benefits. You literally get to choose every moment. Maybe not what happens in that moment, but at least how you respond to it. So as we start, again, rummaging through that proverbial backpack, and I'll get to that metaphor a little bit later, but as we start going through that, it becomes necessary that we take extreme ownership on our life. Unfortunately, I feel like the way the world is heading right now, we are on a very steep, slippery slope, running away from that, running away from accountability, running away from taking ownership, and just stepping into this existence where we're a victim. I don't want that. That doesn't serve me. I don't think it serves anybody. So extreme ownership, investing into yourself, free agency, self-love, all of these things. I often say that self-love does not mean, loving yourself and accepting your current shitty values or the things that you're doing in your life that aren't serving you. That's not what that means. Self-love means looking into the mirror, taking that extreme ownership, and loving yourself enough to be real with yourself and figure out what changes need to happen so that, again, you can become who you need and who you want to be. And what drives that for you, that might change. I'm doing it for me, but I'm also doing it for my children, doing it for my wife. I'm doing it for the people in my inner circles. And one of the big concepts that I want to discuss today definitely ties into when it comes to raising children, and when it comes to me raising my children. So if we're gonna, build the better you, right? It's on my sweats right here. It's the hashtag I've been pushing for a while. Build the better you. One of the goals and missions of the Barbell Club. If we're gonna build the better you, we've got to look within. And going back to that metaphor of a backpack, what are you carrying around in your backpack? The things that you carry and the things that ultimately become how you function in life exist for many different reasons. And there's lots of different ways to look at these things. And one of the ways it was presented to me, and I found this concept, I think earlier in life maybe than most, but it was in my 20s. I think it was like my early 20s. I was exposed to the concept that we have programs essentially that run us. Much like a computer, right? You have programs that are running on that computer to make it function. So these programs that run us, and I should preface that with, I like to give credit where credit's due. When I was first exposed to this concept, I went through some leadership workshops through a company called Clemmer and Associates. And I went through 2 of their workshops. One was a weekend one called Personal Mastery. The other was a week-long one called Advanced Leadership. And some of these concepts that I was able to get exposed to at that early age are priceless. And they're concepts that I continue to come across in my life as I go down the different avenues and rabbit holes of self-help, self-development, and again, becoming who I need and who I want to be. So the concepts that they're presenting aren't new. They just present them in maybe a way that makes sense to somebody. And I said that in episode 1. I'm going to talk about a lot of things that aren't new, talk about a lot of ideas that perhaps feel a little cliche, but hopefully I present them in a way that it clicks or it means something to you. So again, I go to these workshops and I get exposed to some of these ideas, and the idea that we have programs that run us. The other way that it was presented is perhaps we have different pairs of sunglasses that we view life through. Now, the programs that we have or the way that we view life, a lot of this comes from events from early in our life, how we were raised, things that happened to us. And as we go through life, we take these things and these rocks or whatever you want to call them, we put them in our backpack, we carry them around, we let these programs run. And essentially, they get integrated into how we exist. And so if we're going to talk about existence, one of the ways it was explained to me that made sense is that essentially you have 3 levels of consciousness. You have your unconscious, you have your subconscious, you have your conscious awareness, right? You've got those 3, let's say. These programs that you have running, if you're not aware of them, exist in your unconscious awareness. They're just happening by default. Circling back to the free agency, it's our responsibility to take a look into that mirror, take a look at what's going on in our life, how we're responding to things, what we have going on, and recognize them and figure out of these programs that I potentially have running, which ones are serving me and which ones are not. Now, again, these things may be from events, it may be from how we were raised. Some of them may be generational. And some of them I think are even protective in nature. So, like a few examples. Let's say you grew up in a home where there was a lot of contention, and all the contention between mom and dad was about money. There's never enough, always fighting about money, paycheck to paycheck, whatever it was. That breeds and feeds into a scarcity mindset. So now for you in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, maybe you have that same thing running, that same program that's still running, and you exist in a scarcity mindset. This fear, this unconscious fear that there's never enough, or there's never going to be enough, or it's going to run out. And it might show up in all different areas of your life, but it's running because of what you were exposed to and how that got integrated into how you think. I often say one of my biggest goals with raising my children is I want to help them develop the way they think, the way they critically think. They quickly become their own people, which is awesome. Happens, my daughter's 4, my boy's a year and a half, and they already very much their own people. But I want to guide them and lead them so that they are actively and anxiously engaged in being in control of themselves and how they think. I want to change the way my children think. And so it's necessary for us to circle back and look into this and find out what these programs are. So again, I use the scarcity mindset as an example of mom and dad, all the contention, all the fighting was about money, and then you carry that forward. And where did mom and dad get it? There's a pretty good chance that somewhere along the line, grandpa and grandma, mom and dad for them had that too. And again, it becomes this generational thing that's passed down. It's like an heirloom, but it's a pretty shitty one. So sometimes these programs that we have running are good and sometimes they're bad. So I'm not just talking about all the bad ones either. Maybe you grew up in a home that practiced, preached, and lived charity. I believe charity to be the pure love of Christ. Maybe your family, no matter where you went, you were always stopping and helping people. And you would always put others' needs before you. You were always empathetic, thinking about other people's positions and feelings. And maybe that got programmed into you and integrated into how you think and how you function. That might be a great program for you, right? What's necessary for this is to tune in to what you have running in your, again, kind of your unconscious, and bring it to the subconscious at least, and start taking an inventory of these things. And out of these programs that I have running, which ones are serving me and which ones aren't. Now, I mentioned that some of these might be protective in nature. Let's use an example of, let's say you were a child and you were singing out loud, you were singing along to the radio, and one of your friends or a teacher or someone said some statement to you of, hey, you're singing really off key. That's, maybe you should just not do that, right? And the pain or the trauma or the sting of that interaction, as trivial as it may have been, maybe you carried that forward. And now maybe for the rest of your life, because of that interaction you had when you were 5 or 6, maybe now you've got this fear of public speaking into your 20s. And standing up in front of your coworkers or peers in a staff meeting terrifies you because of this protective nature program that you have running. Because of that event, you took that and got that integrated into, well, I don't like how that felt. I'm going to protect myself from that. And that fear is this way of like, well, if you don't go into that zone, then you won't have to feel that again. So often these programs get running, and it's not because of necessarily decisions we made, but circling back to free agency, the decision needs to be made now for you to, again, rummage through that and go, okay, what do I have running? What are some of the programs that are keeping me from ultimately being who I need to be right now? What am I shooting for? What's my 5-year plan? Well, I want a business. Cool. What skills do you need for that? What skills don't you have that you need? What is your biggest hurdle right now? What's stopping you from taking that next step? Now, when you recognize that you have a certain program running, it's not as easy as like, oh, I recognize now whatever you go through counseling, you sit on the couch of tears, as I call it, and you work through all these events in your life, trauma that you've been through, the things that ultimately have affected you and helps shape you into who you are today, and looking at them from a zoomed out position with the guidance of a counselor that has the skills and tools to help you with that. You've got a chance to look in the mirror, look at what you're carrying in your backpack, how it's affecting you, and make some changes. And again, ultimately, I guess, make the changes that need to be made. What's keeping you from progressing? It's not overnight. It doesn't change fast, I don't think. But I think bringing it to your subconscious and your conscious awareness is the first step. I tell my personal training clients a lot. Thinking about it's half the battle. I present them often new ways to think about a movement pattern that they're completing and why we're doing it. And it's not a way that they've ever completed that single arm row. But because we're looking at it from a different angle, it's giving them more intention. They're getting more out of it. But it takes practice. There's statistics on all of this, right? I think once I read for movement patterns, it was 500 to 700 repetitions to create a movement pattern and 5,000 to 7,000 to correct one. So things of this nature that are truly integrated into how we exist and how we run our lives, it's probably not going to be very quick either. So first things first is recognizing what programs I have running, what proverbial pairs of sunglasses that I have that I view life through, and analyzing those, taking an inventory of those and figuring out which ones serve me, which ones don't. And then start taking action on that and recognizing when they pop up. A good friend of mine that's on a similar journey that I am, as far as just ultimately leaning really hard right now, today, into being who he wants to be and who he needs to be for his children and for the life that he wants to create. He and I have weekly calls and we interact intermittently through text and, social media. Well, I'd sent him a reel, and it was just for fun. It was this guy that was in Vegas, and he was on this slot machine and was just throwing just loads of money in this machine. I think he had like $13,000 in it that he was throwing in and trying to get this jackpot or whatever. And I had watched the video and I had sent it to him because he and I have gone to Vegas together a couple times, and I thought he might find it interesting. And he messaged me back after he watched it, and he said, "Man, watching that video, like, I was sweating." He was like, I was stressed. I was stressed for how much money that guy was putting in and how much money he was potentially going to lose. And he goes, in the midst of feeling emotionally compromised and connected to just watching this video, he goes, I immediately realized that scarcity mindset still is very strong, right? And obviously, take that as you will. We're watching some guy, gamble in Vegas. So I'm not saying that you need to go gamble and that's going to fix your scarcity mindset. The point that he was making and that I'm making is that he recognized, just on how he responded to watching that video, that he still has something running towards a certain program that he's felt in his life has kept him from moving forward. One of the events that I went through, I've gone to a few events where, again, I get to hear these monsters of people talk. These people that are living lives that I would like to live, that are in a space of entrepreneurship that I would like to get to. I like to surround myself and rub elbows with people who have what I have and are doing what I want to be doing. That's the best way to get there. That's the fast track. Is I want to be around that energy. I want to learn. I want to learn from their mistakes. I want to absorb. And as I've gone to these events, one of them, he has a mentorship group, and he was sharing what he makes a month on this mentorship group. It was a huge number. It was wild. And as he said it, like, the energy in the room of all of us that were there, like, it was a mixed energy. And as he said the number, he just let it sit for a second. And he said, now some of you, when you heard that number, you immediately said, fuck that guy. And he goes, and that's why you're where you're at. He goes, and the other half of you that when you heard that number said, if he can do it, so can I. He goes, that's the space you need to be in. He goes, and the rest of you, he goes, part of why you're where you're at, or why you're struggling, or why you're spinning your wheels, is because of that scarcity mindset. Or maybe it's just the fact that you're not willing to watch other people win. And you look at that from the space of whatever, let's say it was $900,000 a month he makes on his mentorship. Well, now there's $900,000 less for me to make out there. Since he made that, now there's $900,000 less. That's that mindset of not celebrating someone else winning, and scarcity mindset. There's never enough. But instead, the other half of the room is going, wow, if that guy can do it, imagine what potential there is for me, even if it's a fraction of that. What if I could get to a spot to where through X, Y, and Z, I'm knocking down 100,000 a month, right? There's levels to it all, but it all starts with what's your initial response to that? Because your initial response and how you respond to information or a circumstance or an interaction, it all circles back to these programs that I'm talking about. They're literally the programs that are running your life. Some good, some bad. I know I've had a bunch running from events in my life, trauma in my life, things that I actually was a victim to. But I'm not going to stay a victim, because circling back to free agency, I get to control how I respond to them now. And I'm working on that, and I'm leaning into that very hard. I've said it in previous podcasts already, but nothing's promised. We don't get tomorrow. So I don't want to waste today with these programs running that don't serve me, with these programs that keep me where I'm comfortable. I don't want that. I want to grow. I want to change. I want to touch others. I want to help others. So I'm sitting in this chair. If you think for a minute that I don't have some serious imposter syndrome when I sit down to talk to y'all and do a podcast, you're out of your mind. There's some definite reservations and nerves that goes with all of it. But some of the best ways, once you've recognized that you have certain programs or things holding you back, I think one of the best ways to get through is to do it anyway. Put in the reps. I make the comparison and the metaphor of the gym life versus real life, and it's no different. And I used to loathe squats. I used to hate squats. I was bad at them. And then when I was 17, 18, I was like, man, I need to bring these legs up. I knew I wanted to compete in bodybuilding someday. Started squatting twice a week. Guess what? Still hated it for a while. But then I started getting good at it. My mechanics improved. Strength started going up. Little by little, fast forward now, leg day's best day of the week, changed my mind. I love squatting. I love it all. And I went from being terrible at it to now, at this point in my life, I've had a 605 squat, right? And my legs are some of my best body parts. So doing the things that challenge us, leaning into the things that we're potentially maybe not good at, and taking an inventory on our life. That is your opportunity. That is my opportunity. It is our opportunity with free agency to look at our life and take an inventory of it. You call it an opportunity. I think it's an obligation. If you ultimately want to create the life that you want, and whatever that is, it doesn't have to be big things. It doesn't have to be entrepreneurship. It doesn't have to be any of that. Success is the realization of a worthy ideal. It's one of my favorite definitions of success. So it can be anything that you need or want it to be. But it starts with you, again, with the obligatory look at your life. What don't you like about it? What do you have running in the unconscious version of your mind? Bring it to the subconscious. Grab a hold of it. Get that awareness. And start recognizing when that stuff pops up. And then start correcting it. How do you correct it? Maybe it's counseling. Maybe it's guidance with someone that has the skills and the tools to help guide you. Maybe for some people, it just starts by recognizing it and replacing it with the alternate. There's all sorts of ways, but I think the first step is investing into oneself and taking that inventory. So I think this is a broad subject. I think there's lots of different rabbit holes that we could go down, but that's the basis and the premise that I wanted to get out kind of on this topic. I'm taking that inventory. I'm looking at my life. How am I viewing things? What corrections can I make? What programs do I have running? Which ones continue to serve me and which ones do not? And if they do not, it's time to replace them or remove them. I'm on my soapbox to build the better you. In and out of the gym, live that one more rep philosophy. I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope you've enjoyed the other podcasts. We're going to keep them going. We're going to have some guests. We've got some good topics, some good discussions coming your way. So I appreciate you guys. keep living the life that you want.